The chamber still stank of blood and smoke. The dead predator's body lay in broken pieces across the marble floor, its golden eyes dimming to black. No one spoke. Even the alarms had gone silent, as if the city itself was holding its breath. The human stood in the middle of it all, chest rising slow and steady, his gaze sweeping the room. He looked untouched. While the guards around him looked like they'd seen the end of the world, Lysera found herself unable to move. Every part of her training told her this man was dangerous. But another part whispered something far stranger, that without him, they would all be dead. The other council members avoided his eyes, whispering to one another in low, frightened tones. Some wouldn't even look at the predator's corpse. He turned and began walking toward the shattered doorway, stepping over the remains of the creature as if it were nothing more than a fallen tree. Lysera followed, unsure why. Outside, the street was chaos, smoke rising from burning towers, people running, the air thick with the smell of scorched metal. And yet, when he stepped into the open, the noise seemed to fade. As though the city itself was watching him, alien soldiers stared from behind barricades. Their weapons still clutched tight, but none of them dared step in his way. One young guard made the mistake of asking who he was. The human didn't answer. He only looked at him once, and the guard lowered his weapon without another word. They walked together down the ward-torn streets until they reached a wide landing platform at the city's edge. Lysera could hear the distant roar of another predator somewhere beyond the walls. Her people weren't safe yet. But before she could speak, a squad of armed soldiers rushed in from the far side, surrounding them in seconds. The commander of the squad, a tall alien with heavy armor, raised his weapon. By order of the High Council, he barked, "The human is to be detained and executed." Lysera's blood ran cold. She knew the council feared him, but she hadn't expected them to move so quickly. She stepped forward, placing herself between the human and the soldiers. "Without him," she said sharply, "the predator would have killed every one of us in that chamber." The commander didn't flinch. "And without him here," he replied, "there will be no more predators brought into our city." His eyes flicked to the human with thinly veiled hatred. "He is not one of us. He never will be." The human said nothing. He just watched, as if measuring the distance between himself and the nearest weapon. Lysera realized that if she gave the smallest signal, he could end every soldier here before they fired a single shot. And yet, he waited then. From somewhere deep in the city, a deafening roar split the air. The platform shook under their feet. Lysera's head snapped toward the sound. Another apex predator, closer this time. The soldiers hesitated. And in that hesitation, the human stepped forward. "If you want to live," he said quietly, his eyes locking on the commander's, "then you're going to let me do what I do." The commander hesitated, then lowered his weapon. Slowly, the squad stepped back, but their eyes stayed on the human, like they were watching a bomb that could explode at any second without waiting for permission. He walked toward the sound of the roar. Lysera followed again, feeling that same strange pull in her chest. She didn't understand it, but she knew this much. Whatever was coming, she had to see it. As they moved through the shattered streets, Lysera finally spoke. "What are you?" she asked again, her voice low. He glanced at her, his eyes like cold steel. "A survivor," he said, "and if you're smart, you'll learn how to be one too." They rounded a corner, and there it was. The second apex predator, even larger than the first, its hide covered in scars, its jaws opening wide enough to bite through a tank. It spotted them instantly, lowering itself for the kill. The human rolled his shoulders once, cracking his neck, and for the first time Lysera thought she saw a faint smile touch his lips. "Stay behind me," he said, and then he charged. The chamber still stank of blood and smoke. The dead predator's body lay in broken pieces across the marble floor, its golden eyes dimming to black. No one spoke. Even the alarms had gone silent, as if the city itself was holding its breath. The human stood in the middle of it all, chest rising slow and steady, his gaze sweeping the room. He looked untouched, while the guards around him looked like they'd seen the end of the world. Lysera found herself unable to move. Every part of her training told her this man was dangerous. But another part whispered something far stranger, that, without him, they would all be dead. The other council members avoided his eyes, whispering to one another in low, frightened tones. Some wouldn't even look at the predator's corpse. He turned and began walking toward the shattered doorway, stepping over the remains of the creature as if it were nothing more than a fallen tree. Lysera followed, unsure why. Outside, the street was chaos, smoke rising from burning towers, people running, the air thick with the smell of scorched metal. And yet, when he stepped into the open, the noise seemed to fade, as though the city itself was watching him. Alien soldiers stared from behind barricades. Their weapons still clutched tight, but none of them dared step in his way. One young guard made the mistake of asking who he was. The human didn't answer. He only looked at him once, and the guard lowered his weapon without another word. They walked together down the war-torn streets until they reached a wide landing platform at the city's edge. Lysera could hear the distant roar of another predator somewhere beyond the walls. Her people weren't safe yet. But before she could speak, a squad of armed soldiers rushed in from the far side. Surrounding them in seconds, the commander of the squad, a tall alien with heavy armor, raised his weapon. "By order of the High Council," he barked, "the human is to be detained and executed." Lysera's blood ran cold. She knew the council feared him, but she hadn't expected them to move so quickly. She stepped forward, placing herself between the human and the soldiers. "Without him," she said sharply, "the predator would have killed every one of us in that chamber." The commander didn't flinch. "And without him here," he replied, "there will be no more predators brought into our city." His eyes flicked to the human with thinly veiled hatred. "He's not one of us. He never will be." The human said nothing, just watched, as if measuring the distance between himself and the nearest weapon. Lysera realized that if she gave the smallest signal, he could end every soldier here before they fired a single shot. And yet he waited then. From somewhere deep in the city, a deafening roar split the air. The platform shook under their feet. Lysera's head snapped toward the sound. Another apex predator, closer this time. The soldiers hesitated. And in that hesitation, the human stepped forward. "If you want to live," he said quietly, his eyes locking on the commander's, "then you're going to let me do what I do." The commander hesitated, then lowered his weapon. Slowly, the squad stepped back, but their eyes stayed on the human like they were watching a bomb that could explode at any second, without waiting for permission. He walked toward the sound of the roar. Lysera followed again, feeling that same strange pull in her chest. She didn't understand it, but she knew this much. Whatever was coming, she had to see it. As they moved through the shattered streets, Lysera finally spoke. "What are you?" she asked again, her voice low. He glanced at her, his eyes like cold steel. "A survivor," he said. "And if you're smart, you'll learn how to be one too." They rounded a corner, and there it was. Second apex predator even. Larger than the first, its hide covered in scars, its jaws opening wide enough to bite through a tank. It spotted them instantly, lowering itself for the kill. The human rolled his shoulders once, cracking his neck, and for the first time, Lysera thought she saw a faint smile touch his lips. "Stay behind me," he said, and then he charged. The predator's roar shook the ruins, scattering dust from the broken walls. It lowered its massive head, claws tearing into the stone street as it prepared to strike. Lysera could feel the vibrations through her boots. Any other soldier would have waited for backup. But the human didn't slow. He hit the creature head-on, moving faster than her eyes could follow. His hands grabbed the edge of its armored jaw, twisting violently to the side. The beast thrashed, snapping its tail like a whip, smashing chunks of wall into the air. The human took the hit to his ribs, but didn't break his grip. The predator lunged, biting down, but he jammed his arm deep into its mouth, driving his fist up into the roof of its skull. The sound it made was like metal tearing. Alien blood sprayed across the stones, sizzling where it landed. Lysera had seen elite warriors fight with every weapon her people had invented. Not one of them could do this. The human moved with. No wasted motion, every strike precise, every movement like he already knew what the beast would do before it did it. The predator stumbled back. One of its legs shattered. It roared in pain and rage, but he didn't give it a chance to recover. He leaped, caught hold of the jagged armor plates along its spine, and began tearing. Each pull ripped away huge pieces of flesh and bone until the creature's back was an open ruin. Finally, with a sound like a tree splitting, the predator collapsed, shuddering once before going still. The human stepped off the corpse, breathing. Hard, but still steady. His arms and chest were slick with dark blood. Lysera realized she hadn't moved since he attacked. Her eyes locked on him, as if her mind was afraid to look away. Around them, soldiers who had been hiding now emerged, their faces a mix of awe and fear. No one spoke. No one dared. A voice came from behind them, sharp and cold. "That is exactly why he cannot be allowed to live." Lysera turned to see 3 members of the High Council, flanked by heavily armed guards. The council leader, his robes flowing in the wind, stepped forward. "Do you see it, Commander? This is not a man. This is a weapon humanity will use against us when they are ready." The human's eyes narrowed, but he didn't speak. Lysera's voice was low but steady. Without him, both of those predators would have killed us all. The council leader's face was like stone, and with him, more predators will follow. That is how Deathworlders operate. They bring danger with them, and they survive while everyone else dies. The human finally spoke, his voice calm but edged with steel. "I didn't bring them here, but I will kill every one of them I find." The council leader raised a hand, and the guards stepped forward. "Take him." Lysera moved without thinking, placing herself between the human and the guards. Her pulse hammered in her ears, but her voice didn't shake. "No." The council leader's eyes narrowed. "Then, you defy the High Council." "I protect the people," she said. "Right now." "The only one protecting them is him." The guards hesitated, waiting for an order. The tension in the air was sharp enough to cut then. Far in the distance, another roar echoed across the city. Louder, deeper, and closer. Everyone froze. The human glanced toward the sound, then at Lysera. "Your walls won't hold. You know that." The council leader looked ready to argue, but the roar came again, shaking dust from the towers. His expression hardened. "If you fail," he said to the human, "your death will be slow." The human gave no reply. He simply stepped past Lysera, heading toward the noise. Lysera followed, her mind spinning. She didn't know if he was her people's salvation, or the beginning of something far more dangerous. But she knew one thing. She wasn't letting him face whatever was coming, alone. The city gates stood like wounded giants, their steel frames bent and scorched. Beyond them stretched the wastes, a scarred land of jagged black rock, shifting sand, and twisted wreckage from wars no one remembered. Heat shimmered in the distance, and the wind carried the dry taste of dust and ash. Lysera had never left the safety of the walls without an armed escort. Now, she walked beside the human, no guards, no orders, just a silent agreement that whatever was hunting them would not wait. Behind them, the roars of predators still echoed, but fainter now, swallowed by the endless horizon. The human didn't look back. His eyes scanned the terrain as if every shadow might hold teeth. They moved fast, climbing over broken metal holes half buried in sand, crossing dry riverbeds filled with bones. The wastes were deadly not because of one predator, but because everything out here wanted to kill you. Lysera's people had learned that long ago, and yet the human walked like he belonged here. She watched him in silence for a time. The way he stepped lightly on loose rock, the way his head turned at the smallest sound, the way his hand was never far from the crude blade he'd taken from a dead soldier. He didn't waste energy. He didn't hesitate. Finally, she asked, "Where did you learn to fight like that?" He didn't stop walking. "Where I'm from, everything that breathes tries to kill you. If you want to see tomorrow, you fight. You adapt. You don't stop." Lysera frowned. "And where is that?" He glanced at her. "Earth. A death world." She'd heard the term before, a classification used for planets so hostile that survival was almost impossible. But she'd never met anyone who came from one. You'd say that like it's a badge of honor. He shrugged. It's not honor. It's reality. The wind shifted, carrying with it a faint metallic scent. The human stopped, raising a hand for her to stay still. His head tilted slightly, listening. Lysera heard it a second later, a low, grinding scrape, followed by a clicking sound that seemed to move under the ground. "What is that?" she whispered. He crouched, pressing his hand to the sand. Something big and close. The ground trembled beneath them. Lysera's hand went to her weapon, but the human was already moving, now grabbing her by the arm and pulling her toward a cluster of jagged rock formations. They slipped into a narrow crevice just as the sand behind them exploded. Upward, a massive creature burst from the ground, all armored plates and spiked limbs, its eyeless head snapping from side to side. It was hunting by sound, feeling for vibrations in the ground. Lysera's heart hammered. How do we kill it? The human's eyes stayed locked on the beast. We don't. Not yet. They moved deeper into the rocks, careful not to disturb. Loose stones. The creature prowled the surface, its claws digging trenches in the sand. Twice it paused, tilting its head toward them, but then it moved on, vanishing underground with a hiss. Lysera exhaled slowly. If you'd been alone, would you have fought it? He looked at her, and for a moment she thought she saw a flicker of amusement in his eyes. If I'd been alone, it wouldn't have found me. They kept moving, the sun dropping lower, shadows stretching across the wastes. Night here was worse than day. That's when the real hunters came out. By the time they reached the rusting, remains of an old battlefield, Lysera's legs ached. Massive alien war machines lay scattered like dead gods, their holes pitted with plasma burns, their weapons long silent. It was the perfect place for predators to hide. The human stopped at the entrance to a hollowed-out bunker. We stay here tonight. Lysera glanced around. This place is a graveyard. Exactly, he said. No one comes back to graveyards. Inside, they found broken crates and the faint smell of old fuel. The human started clearing space. For a fire, but Lysera shook her head. Light will draw predators. He looked at her for a long moment, then smirked faintly. So will fear. Which one do you want? She didn't answer. Instead, she sat against the wall, watching him work. The flames he built were small, but bright enough to push back the dark. For the first time since she'd met him, Lysera let herself breathe. But as she looked at him, framed by firelight, she realized something. The predators weren't what scared her the most. It was him. And the feeling that whatever he was running from was still out there. In getting closer, the fire crackled softly in the dark, its light casting shifting shadows across the bunker's walls. Outside, the wastes were alive with sound-distant roars, the scrape of claws against metal, the hiss of something moving through sand. Lysera listened for patterns, for anything that might mean danger was close. The human sat on the other side of the fire, sharpening his blade with slow, steady strokes. She studied him for a long time before speaking. Earth, she said quietly. I've heard the name, a Deathworld, but no one travels there. Number. One comes back. He didn't look up. That's because they can't, she frowned. Can't, or won't. His gaze met hers then, steady and unreadable. Both. He set the blade aside, leaning forward slightly. Your galaxy classifies planets by danger levels, right? Atmosphere, predators, disease, environmental stability, all that. She nodded. Earth, he continued, isn't just high on that scale. It breaks the scale. Every predator there has a predator. Every plant that feeds you can kill you. Weather can burn you alive one day and freeze you solid the next. We evolved to survive all of it. Lysera tilted her head. And you think that makes you stronger than the rest of us? His voice was calm, almost quiet. It makes us different. The way he said it made her uneasy. Different how? He leaned back, eyes drifting to the firelight. On most worlds, predators stop when they've eaten enough. On Earth, we never stopped. We learned to hunt not for food, but for the challenge. We learned to take down things bigger than us, faster than us, stronger than us. We didn't just survive against them. We wiped them out. Lysera felt a chill that had nothing to do with the night air. "Do you know what that means, Commander?" he asked, his tone soft, almost dangerous. She shook her head slowly. "It means that when we meet something stronger than us," his eyes locked on hers again, cold and steady, "we don't run. We figure out how to kill it, no matter how long it takes." The fire popped, breaking the silence. For a moment, Lysera thought about the Council's words that humanity would be a threat to the galaxy. She could almost see it now. Not because they sought destruction, because they refused to be prey to anyone. Before she could reply, a faint metallic sound echoed from outside. The human was on his feet instantly, blade in hand. Lysera rose too, drawing her rifle. From the darkness beyond the bunker, a small drone floated into view, alien in design, scanning light sweeping across the ruins. "Council tracker," Lysera murmured. "They've found us." The human's eyes narrowed. Not just them. Another sound followed, heavier, wet, dragging. Lysera's stomach tightened as a massive shadow moved behind the drone, blotting out the stars. The human didn't wait. He grabbed her arm, pulling her toward a side passage in the bunker. Time to move. They slipped through the broken corridor, emerging into the cold night. Behind them, the drone's light vanished in a flash of crushing jaws, followed by the wet crunch of metal and bone. Lysera didn't look back, but she could hear it coming after them. The wind howled across the jagged plains, carrying the scent of blood and burning metal. Lysera's boots pounded against the cracked earth as she followed the human through the ruins. Behind them, the predator's roar split the night low. Deep and hungry, she risked a glance over her shoulder. Bad idea. The thing was massive. Too many limbs, all muscle and claw, eyes like molten glass. It was faster than it had any right to be, leaping over collapsed structures and tearing through anything in its way. The human didn't slow. "Keep moving," he barked. Lysera's lungs burned, but she pushed harder. Somewhere above, a sharp whistle cut through the wind. She looked up. Sleek black dropships streaked across the sky, their hulls marked with crimson sigils. "Mercenaries," they hissed. "They're not here for the predator," the human said without looking back. "They're here for me." Dropships descended, kicking up clouds of dust as heavy figures in full combat armor hit the ground. They moved with precision, rifles raised, forming a kill box between the ruins and the open plains. The predator roared again, closing the distance. Lysera's instincts screamed, "We can't go forward. We can't go back." The human grinned. "We don't do either," he veered sharply, pulling her into a narrow service trench half hidden under rubble. The walls were slick with condensation, the air heavy and stale. They crouched low, moving fast, while shouts echoed above them. The mercenaries spread out, scanning with thermal sensors. Then the predator hit them. It came from the side, slamming into the armored line with bone-crushing force. The night filled with screams, gunfire, and the shriek of tearing metal. Lysera ducked instinctively as something heavy smashed against the trench wall, showering them with dirt. The human glanced up, eyes narrowing as if calculating every second of chaos. They'll be too busy to follow. For now, Lysera didn't miss the way, he said for now. They crawled deeper into the trench until it opened into a buried transport tunnel. Rusted tracks stretched into darkness. The human found an emergency panel, tore it open, and yanked out a dusty power cell. With a quick spark, dim overhead lights flickered on. "Where does this lead?" Lysera asked. "Underground, far away from here." She wanted to believe him, but there was something in his tone. Something that said he wasn't just running. To escape above them, the sounds of battle faded, replaced by something worse. Silence. The human froze, listening then softly. A scraping. Something moving in the dark tunnel ahead. Lysera tightened her grip on her rifle. "Please tell me that's not." The scraping grew louder, wetter, closer. The human stepped forward, blade ready, and smiled without humor. "I guess we're not the only hunters down here." The tunnel air was thick, almost too thick. Lysera could feel it pressing on her lungs, carrying a sour metallic temps. Somewhere ahead, the scraping sound stopped, replaced by the faint drip of water. The human didn't hesitate. He walked forward slowly, every step measured, his blade angled low. Lysera followed, rifle raised, trying not to let the flickering lights mess with her aim. Shadows shifted on the walls, shapes that didn't match their movements. Then, in the gloom, something blinked. Not one eye. Not two, dozens. A mass slithered forward, pale and slick, its skin glistening like oil. It moved like liquid muscle, its body stretching unnaturally to fill the tunnel. That's not a predator, Lysera breathed. The human glanced back at her. No, that's worse. Before she could ask, the thing lunged, erupted. Into chaos, claws slicing at the walls, chunks of concrete raining down. Lysera fired a burst into its face, but the rounds sank in without slowing it. The human was already moving, ducking under a swipe and driving his blade deep into its dade. Sighed. It shrieked, the sound vibrating through her bones, and whipped him off his feet. He hit the wall hard, but rolled back up before she could even shout his name. "It's hunting us," he said, dodging another strike. But not for food. Lysera kept firing, forcing the thing back just enough for them to retreat deeper into the tunnel. They rounded a corner, froze. The walls here weren't stone anymore. They were metal, old, covered in strange markings that glowed faintly at their presence. Lysera traced her fingers over one. "This isn't part of the city's infrastructure." The human didn't answer. His eyes were locked on a huge circular door at the end of the chamber, half buried in rubble. The creature's shriek echoed again, closer now. Lysera turned to him. "We can't outrun it forever." "I'm not trying to outrun it," he said. "I'm trying to lead it here." She stared. "Why?" The human stepped toward the ancient door, resting one blood-streaked hand against the symbols. "'Cause whatever's behind this is the only thing in this galaxy that scares it." A deep thrum vibrated through the floor, as if the door itself had heard him. The markings flared brighter. Something massive shifted beyond the metal. The scraping grew louder, rushing toward them. Lysera raised her weapon. "What's behind that door?" The human's smile was cold, an even bigger monster. The door's glow pulsed faster, like a heartbeat. The deep thrum became a low rumble, shaking dust loose from the tunnel's ceiling. The creature chasing them rounded the corner, slick body folding and unfolding like a living nightmare. It shrieked, the sound a mix of fury and fear. Lysera felt it instantly. The thing was slowing down. It didn't want to get closer to the door. The human stepped forward, chains still hanging from his wrists like trophies. "Knew you'd stop." The monster's many eyes fixed on him, but it didn't advance. The door split down the middle with a deafening crack. Steam hissed out, and a blast of cold air rolled through the chamber, carrying with it a smell older than the war, older than the city itself, the smell of something ancient waking up. Lysera's grip tightened on her rifle. "What exactly are you unleashing?" The human didn't look at her. His gaze was locked on the widening gap. "Not unleashing," he said, "negotiating." Through the mist, a silhouette appeared, massive, humanoid, but wrong in ways Lysera couldn't name. Its head nearly scraped the tunnel roof, and its eyes burned like molten gold. The creature in the tunnel hissed and backed away fast, its bulk folding into the shadows until it was gone. The towering figure stepped forward, each footfall shaking. The ground, it stopped before the human, and bowed its head slightly. Lysera's heart pounded. "It knows you." The human's voice was calm. "It remembers me." She blinked. "From where?"
"How?"
His answer was quiet, almost lost in the cold air. "From the last time I broke it out. And together, we burned their empire to the ground." Her stomach dropped. Whose empire? The molten gold eyes turned to her, and for a moment she felt as if the weight of centuries was crushing her. The human smiled, not warm, but sharp, dangerous. Every single one that ever thought humans could be controlled. Behind him, the massive being straightened, its presence filling the space like a storm about to break. The human glanced at Lysera. Now, we finish what we started. The tunnel shook again, but this time, it wasn't from the predator. It was from the sound of hundreds of footsteps, distant but closing in. Alien High Council's forces had found them, Lasara's. Mind screamed for her to run, but her instincts told her something else. Stay close to the human. The massive door slammed shut behind the creature, sealing the tunnel in darkness except for the glow of its golden eyes. And in that last flicker of light before the fight began, Lasara realized the truth, the apex predator. It had been nothing but a distraction. The real danger was the human all along.